Hey guys, I'm Ivan from Booking.com. I came here to briefly talk about blue-green and canary deployments as we do them at Booking. And I have only 5 minutes. This is my first Dual Lightning talk, so I'm a little bit nervous. So bear with me. So just to throw you some facts at you. So at Booking, we have 16 Kubernetes clusters. What is important, they are multi-tenant. So we don't deploy the cluster per team, but rather have multiple teams share the clusters. All of these clusters are using around 1,500 nodes. And we have a very rapidly growing amount of services which runs on top of those clusters. So at this moment, it's about 700 of them. So at Booking, like at our scale, we need to deploy to multiple regions. And on top of that, we also love advanced deployment strategy because they allow us to ship our code at the high pace, but at the same time to certify to maintain a good customer experience. So one of the ways how we can do this is to basically take CI/CD and configure that CI/CD to deploy to multiple clusters. This is what we've done, but in our experience, this seems to be a error-prone solution because any failure inside the CI/CD or any failure inside any of the Kubernetes clusters lead to a state where, for example, 2 different clusters may run a different application versions because just like simply CI/CD failed to deploy a version 2 to new cluster. And that's like, in our experience, this significantly complicates the debugging because now we need to figure out like which version runs where and like fight with them. So instead, what we wanted to achieve, we wanted to have a setup where we can ensure that there is a consistency of the application versions between 2 clusters, and also that we can deploy in advanced way, using certain deployment strategies, which Kubernetes doesn't give you by default. So what we've built a system which setup includes so-called management cluster. And management cluster is a regular Kubernetes cluster which runs a set of Kubernetes native controllers, which we jointly call shipper. Shipper is basically a thing which, given an application spec, an application YAML, ensures that the application is deployed to multiple clusters. But on top of that, shipper is actually make sure that it constantly reconciles the application, make sure that the version of this application is deployed, in the same version, and it's the same version. And of course, knowing that we love the advanced strategies, the shipper allow us to do a bunch of advanced rollout strategies. For example, we can do, our deployment usually consists of 3 steps. It's a staging, it's a canary, and it's a full-on, which I'm going to talk in a second. Before that, briefly, what an application spec consists of. So application spec, this is basically a link to the Helm chart and a bunch of customization there, such as values. And on the other side of the system, shipper conceptually replaces tiller and make sure that the Helm chart is deployed. An application contains a bunch of cluster selectors, which let the developer specify not only what regions we want to deploy to, but also what kind of capabilities a cluster needs to have in order to satisfy the application requirements. And of course, finally, the rollout strategies. And each step inside this rollout strategy controls 2 aspects. The aspect number 1, this is the capacity. This is literally how many pods of a certain version right now an application should have. And the second one is the traffic. So this is how much of the production traffic should go to that particular version. So for example, by default at Booking, our example rollout strategy, as already mentioned, consists of 3 steps. The first one is a staging, which we basically take and deploy a new version of application, but we route no traffic there. This is conceptually your last step when this is the last chance for you to do any final checks before the live traffic starts reaching the application. The next one is a canary. This is where we basically take some portion of the traffic and route to this new version of application. So, and if something goes wrong, A, it's not going to affect, it's only going to affect the fairly limited amount of the customers, and B, we can always quickly roll it back. And the last one is a full-on, where we basically take the new version of the application and we make it be production, so meaning that there is 100% of capacity and 100% of traffic reached out to it. So this is what we do, but the coolest thing is that this is also what you can do yourself, because Shipper, it's an open source project which we created and which we're currently maintaining, so try it out. Here's the links. Thank you.
So I'm Livio. I'm a system engineer at Mambu. I'm part of the release engineering team, and today I'm going to tell you a bit about Argo CD and how we can use it for your GitOps flows. So why I'm talking about Argo CD is that it does play an important role in Mambu's Kubernetes pipelines. We found this open source project while we were looking for a GitOps operator. We checked it out. We liked what it was doing. And it ended up in our production. And we also contributed some features to it. And it's a GitOps operator, which means that it's an application that runs in your cluster. And you can configure it to look at some Git repos. And inside those Git repos, it can find some, let's say, Kubernetes manifests. And it will take those manifests and it will apply them to the cluster. And if you modify those manifests, if you edit them, if you create new ones, delete them, it will take those changes and apply them to the cluster. So what it actually does, it's keep it synced, the Git repo contents with the cluster state. So it has a really nice UI that you can start with Argo CD. Like you can see what happens during a sync, those boxes will move. But not only this is also a good way to onboard people with Kubernetes, because you can see what's happening inside your cluster. You can see, for example, a deployment, how pods are being created, how pods are being terminated, stateful set. You can see all these kind of things on this UI, and it's really nice. Some other features that it has. It can be installed on only one cluster, and from there it can manage multiple clusters. So it can install and sync applications in other clusters. It does support single sign-on. So for example, you can use your Google account to log in on the UI or even to the CLI. And I'm sure that this will keep your compliance people happy. It also, very interesting is that if you install it with the customized version, which is like the recommended version for production, it can also update itself. So if you configure it after the installation to look at its own repo from where you install it, you can upgrade it from there. You can change its configuration. And the changes will be picked up by Argo CD itself and applied on itself. You can find Slack channels online. You can ask questions. You can get a lot of help. There are regular meetings. You can find on YouTube the previous ones. And there's also a public roadmap where you can see, the next 2-3 versions, what they will work on. A little bit about its architecture. Like this blue rectangle, it's what gets installed into the cluster. So you have the API, which the UI are the CLI calls, or you can build your own client. Then there's the repository service, which takes care of takes those manifests from the cluster. And from there, it will create the real objects that get applied to Kubernetes. So besides simple manifest, it does support Helm chart. It supports customize, KSonnet and JSonnet. And for example, on Helm, it doesn't use Tiller. It uses Helm template to generate the final manifest, which will be applied to the cluster. And there's also, of course, there is a controller because it does use some CRDs. And those CRDs will get applied by these controllers, and it will look for them. And when you create them, it will apply them with the API. I'm not sure if you can see this, but it does have some sync hooks. And theoretically, after a sync, you can send a message to, let's say, a Slack channel if the sync was successful or not. And Argo CD watches every 3 minutes, it will look on those Git repos that you configured to watch on. But you can skip this with a webhook. It does support GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket webhooks. And you can don't need to wait for all those 3 minutes for a sync on a specific repo. And that's about it.
Yes, hi everybody. So this talk will not be about Kubernetes. Thank you. Yes. These are 5 minutes from the day which we're not going to talk about Kubernetes. So my name is Katalin. My name is not important. As it was mentioned at the beginning of the conference, we're doing efforts, and the organizers of the conference are doing efforts to kind of fight climate change. And we can do it in different ways. Yeah? So those are some images from Spain. This is happening now. And I have some friends which are going for holiday in Spain. And they go outside of July and August when it's very expensive to fly because they don't have kids which are at school, so they can travel when it's cheaper, actually. But this is happening now. So they're not going to enjoy their holiday, and probably also you're going to experience that somewhere next year, or in 2 years, or in 3 years. And for sure, our kids, they're going to struggle with that a lot more. So what can we actually do? Yeah, we're having a vegetarian barbecue, and those are implications. Yeah, for okay, why does it matter if you have vegetarian food? Because okay, we're not gonna kill some trees somewhere in Brasilia to raise cereals, to raise cows, to eat the cows. Yeah, and it's easy to tell poor countries to okay, don't do that, don't cut the Amazon, while we live in very wealthy countries, yeah, and have higher standards of living, but we can do stuff, yeah. So we can try to do small steps, and we saw examples today of how to do that, yeah. And if you want to take some action and you don't know how to do it, yeah, it's as easy as joining a tech community. So you go to this website. So I'm going to wait. So people are going to make pictures. I want to see at least 10 persons making pictures, yeah. You can go to this website, you're going to join a community, you sign a form, you join a Slack channel, like you're contributing to any open source projects, and they're going to help you, and they give you ideas on how to do some action in this area. And this is specifically targeting tech people, so it's started by engineers from companies who are also contributing to Kubernetes or CNCF projects. And they can give you ideas, and there's also something happening next week. It's a climate strike, and you can go and actually went on a strike. So who actually went on a strike ever? Can I see some hands? Yes, those are the heroes. So you can talk to those guys who actually went for a strike. If you don't have the courage yet to do it, there's a digital strike. So what does mean? So you can just put some banners or push some notifications or put some notification on website, on your blog, or tweet, or do some social media noise, and that will help as well. It will raise awareness. If you're not going directly on a strike, maybe somebody who's going to see the message will go. And if you're really ready to actually go on a strike, you go to the websites. I'm going to share the link again on the next slide. And they can put you in touch with people. You're going to register. They can put you in touch with people in your town and your company, your enterprise. And together, you're going to have more courage and you can do something. So that was it. Thanks. And yeah.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed a good coffee downstairs. It's a really good stand downstairs. Good coffee, good cakes. But I was wondering, is there some kind of not so hidden message in the name of that stand? I mean, I would certainly feel bitter if I was editing YAML files all day. I'm not sure. Don't worry, it's only 5 minutes. I'm in a developer background, so I do coding in .NET, and I do a lot of stuff with serverless, so I don't need to worry a lot of things, which you need to worry about. I do see a lot of cool technology stuff here, and I'm really quite inspired by it. But it also is a lot to take in for me. So if you feel the same, come talk to me afterwards. We can touch on some lighter subjects. A few words about serverless on Azure. Just in general, serverless, why do I like it? Well, first, it's an abstraction of servers. I really don't want to deal with this stuff. I like to work with code, work with documents and some data, and be done with it. I really like the whole event-driven programming model. It scales automatically, and it will give you the best performance available. And the last one, the pay-per-use is really nice. So if I'm not running anything, there's no workload or low workload, I'm not paying anything at all. So that's good. Especially serverless on Azure. Azure has a lot of different components about serverless, compute, storage, etc. But I want to highlight Azure Functions. And Azure Functions is really easy to begin with, but it's also getting quite mature right now. You can code in a lot of different languages. your code can be triggered by different kind of events, by blob or queues or whatever. And it also has bindings, so you can easily load in your data or store your data somewhere else. So Azure Functions really, I would say, as my tip, broaden your scope and have a look at Azure Functions later. Just 2 examples. The top left is a C# function, very small one, and the bottom right is a JavaScript one. But there's also Python and other languages available. So don't think it's just enough for an Hello World app or something like that. People are really running and need big scale things on this. So Troy Hunt has his Have I Been Pawned backend running in Azure Functions. And like it's mentioned here, it's about almost a year ago, like paying just over $30 for a month. So that's pretty nice. A slight explanation about the durable functions, which is an extension on Azure Functions. And with durable functions, you can create workflows. You can define them in code, so in C# or in JavaScript. And you can create a bit more complex workflows in Azure Functions. Because normally functions are stateless, but with durable functions, the name already says it, it is stateful. So your orchestrations, your workflow is persisted to disk. And because it is persisted and it is rehydrated over and over again, you're also not limited to the maximum execution time. So that's very nice. This was really an executive summary of a talk, which normally lasts 45 minutes, but there's a GitHub repository where you can download the full source code of all the examples which are there. The Microsoft documentation is some very nice explanation of different programming models and then architectural patterns on serverless. Azure Functions and durable functions is open source, so if you want to contribute, definitely possible. If you still want to go containers, you can definitely do that. And there's even a solution now to run it also on Kubernetes with a product called Kida. Final thing, container technology is really nice and impressive, but where you maybe don't need it, definitely have a look at Azure Functions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I just was asked what I have to do a talk here about something that unifies Kubernetes and something else like technology, like us. I'm here, I have the honor, thanks Floor for doing this, to give us a space as a Hack Your Future. And I want to start with the word resilient, because resilient is something that is basically capable of recover out of damage. I think that's where we stand on. So, Hack Your Future, which we have some components here. Please, guys, can you wave us? Woo! And it's a community and also a school that is born 3 years ago. And with the purpose of find a job to people who had like a difficult past, let's say it like this. Label it in for the country movement as refugees. Behind you can see some students that in this occasion they are practicing brainstorming, so they are with event-driven models, which it's called the event storming the session. I'm a pretty fan of that. So we try to cover all the entire spectrum of building and applications. Our students go through selections, 6 very hard months. They need to learn how to do HTML, CSS, JavaScript for the front end and the back end, and also learn how to build a project. They learn how to do React application, but they are a bit behind the deployment stack, because it's a very complicated thing to learn anyway. With that said, I'm here to elaborate on the concept of resilient in your company, right? How resilient you are in your culture, like how prepared are you to welcoming junior developers like ours? So how you can, for instance, help us out in, let's say, spread the awareness of that in your little job. I call it little because that's how I felt when I started doing coding, because it's very isolated. You're solving problems that sometimes doesn't feel like problems. Thanks to Hack Your Future, I can say that right now I feel that I give some meaningfulness, like a bit like a stateful container in my job, and I do that day by day. And I'm very glad of being here, having the opportunity to spread you the same message. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.